What's happening? I've got one quick question for you today, and it is, have you forgotten the God who is with you? Now, this is the thing. When we're going through good times, bad times, whatever season we're in, one of the things that is really important for us to do as believers is to remember that God is present with us. And I just want to take a look at a few verses just to encourage you real quick wherever you are. And so Psalm 46 from verse 1 says, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, though the earth gives way, though the mountains be moved into the heart of the sea, though its waters roar and foam, though the mountains tremble at its swelling. So picture this. What we're saying through these verses is that regardless of what happens, regardless of how great or not so great things are, regardless of how nature itself may turn against us, regardless of if the mountains are moved into the heart of the sea, we're not going to fear. Why? And it's because of who's with us. It's because we know God, the creator who made the earth, who made the whole world, and who is sovereign and in control of every single thing, is with us. And so I remember a little story from when I was much younger. I think I might have been maybe 11 or 12. I was sat at the back of a bus. I had a mobile phone in my pocket. And I remember there were some guys, I grew up in East London, it's a bit rough around there. And some of the guys that were sitting at the back of the bus were much older, and obviously they were living this road life. And so they obviously saw me, figured out that I had a phone, and so one of them must have approached me and said, what's the time? And so, skip a long story short, his whole game was to get me to get my phone out of my pocket, asked me to play games. I didn't want to give him the phone. He pulls out a knife and says to me, look, every one of us have got one of these on this bus. And so if you don't give it to us, this is what's going to happen. And so in those moments, I'm young. I was scared. But then one of his friends looked at me and quickly got his friend's attention and said, no, you can't do that. That's Arnold. He's so-and-so's cousin. And so in that very moment, what would have otherwise led to my phone being stolen or me potentially getting hurt, turned out to something where I was saved and gained a whole lot of respect from every single one of them because of who was connected to me. And so that example of something that I experienced in my life is such a small picture of something that is so true and so real with us. If we know that God is the one that we've connected to and we're in relationship with, it should change our perspective on life and all situations. Because when we're in situations when we would otherwise be caused to fear and be afraid, just like any other person would, and our natural emotions would cause us to be, we remember that we're connected to God. We remember that He is for us and He is on our side. And we can take confidence to know that if God is with us, if He's with us, then it doesn't matter where we go. It doesn't matter what we're exposed to. It doesn't matter how amazing or not things look. We always have the advantage because we are connected in relationship with the eternal creator who made the whole world and who is sovereign over all things. But there could be a few things that are stopping us from remembering that. And there could be a few different things that are causing us to feel extremely overwhelmed in the situation beyond being able to get past that moment. Because don't get me wrong, when we're in this situation, to an extent it's understandable to feel some level of overwhelm or some initial, feelings of, oh wow, this is what's in front of me. But sooner or later, I believe that the place that God is calling us to get to as His children is one where even if we have those initial moments where we start off feeling a little bit afraid or a little bit overwhelmed, we come to a place when we remember and we come to our senses and remember that, hold on, God is with me. And so when I'm in a situation at work where I feel like a project in front of me is way beyond my skill set, my experience, or what I've ever done in my life before, at first, it might cause me to take a little bit of a deep breath, but I should always come to that place where I remember that God is with me. And if God is with me, then even those areas of weaknesses, lack of experience, skills, or whatever it is, God will compensate and make up for more than what I could have ever done on my own. And yes, I have a responsibility to do my very best to be as equipped as I possibly can. But the bigger thing, the most important thing overriding all of that is that I even submit my skills and my preparation into God's hands, and I trust that He is going to enable me and empower me to overcome what would otherwise be impossible. And as we grow on our journey as believers into a more mature place, I believe that those moments of initial fear and overwhelm can actually last a much shorter and shorter amount of time as we grow in confidence and we grow in our first-hand experiences with God, of knowing Him firsthand, having seen Him deliver us and help us to grow and move beyond what once seemed impossible time and time again. But if you ask me what I think is one of the number one things that stops us or holds us back from really embracing the type of attitude that constantly remembers that God is with me and therefore I have the advantage. I think one of the big things that stops us is our failure to actually do the digging and to do the groundwork of seeking God, pursuing Him through His Word, reading the scriptures in a disciplined manner, not just when we need the help, but also in seasons where things generally seem like they're okay and there's not necessarily a storm going on. I really do believe that what we're doing in our good seasons, in the seasons where we're comfortable and there isn't anything pressed against us, is what will determine how confident we really do get in those moments where things are turned against us. And so practical tips that I try to practice to try and make that initial panic and overwhelm smaller and smaller, and to really build my faith up to remember that God is with me in whatever I'm doing, is number one, looking at the testimonies of others. The word speaks about how we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of our testimony. And I really do believe that throughout the scriptures, we see countless examples of different people who walked with God at different times and who had first-hand experiences of trusting God and seeing Him do the impossible. And so from the Old Testament, looking at stories like Joseph, who was sold into slavery but eventually ended up going through a whole lot of ups and downs that eventually led to promotion and being put in a position of significant importance and authority, to stories of people like Moses, who had to really be encouraged to know that it was God who was with him and I am who had sent him when he had to deal with Pharaoh and delivering the children of Israel from Egypt, and all these other classic Old Testament stories as well as New Testament. Those stories really help us to get an insight into who God is, how God is, how He operates, and the fact that He works with and does the impossible with very normal people who are just like you and I. And for those who object and would say, the scripture's all about Jesus from Genesis to Revelation, it's not about you, you are not Joseph, you are not so-and-so, I hear you, and I used to say those things too. But I think we sometimes miss the point when we have those sorts of thoughts. Because whether I'm looking at the life of Joseph, Moses, Abraham, or one of my friends like Tolu, Jonas and Israel, the stories are not about me trying to be those people. It's about me learning about God and His ways. But if we dismiss all of that, I think it really robs us from coming to know God on a deeper level that makes sense in the big moments and big areas of our lives as well as the small. So have you forgotten the God who is with you? If you're someone who feels overwhelmed or struggles to build the faith and confidence to know that even when you feel overwhelmed, that God is with you and for you, then my encouragement to you is to get back in His Word. Spend time really chewing over the scriptures, chewing over the stories of His experiences firsthand with different people who went before us. Don't rush past it just to gain lots of information, but really chew over it, section by section, verse by verse, and make it your prayer that God would help you to remember that He is with you. Peace.